Android Soo, Parallel Blue. Written and illustrated by Diana. Chapter 3. The temperature control system at the Rutherford Hotel was familiar to Sue. There were a couple of minor differences which Kay helped her with, but she did most of the work herself. This job didn't really need 2 androids to get the repairs done. After the job was finished, it was only early afternoon. Kay suggested that he take Sue for a quick tour of the city. Sue realized that since coming back through the time portal, she had only been to Enviro Repair and the Rutherford Hotel, transporting directly between the 2 buildings. She wondered if Serapi was different in this parallel time. As soon as they walked out of the Rutherford Hotel at the 20th sub-level below ground into the public street, Sue could see many things were different in this time. In her own time, Sue hadn't been to many places in Serapi besides her own apartment and the job site she went to for Sten. All the public places in Serapi Sue knew were made for only humans. She would occasionally visit a friend if they had a transporter receiving unit, but trying to travel around the city on foot was practically impossible for someone of her small size. It took too long to get anywhere on foot, and trying to travel in human-sized public transportation was too dangerous. There was always the hazard of getting stepped on, sat on, or run over. When humans were in a hurry, something the size of a GX series android was outside of their notice. Immediately outside the door of the Rutherford was a transparent vertical tube with an android-size elevator inside. This elevator took Sue and Kay up 1 level to a larger transparent tube containing a long car with many seats, some sized for the GX series and some for smaller android sizes. Sue had never seen anything like this before. The clear tubes ran from building to building across the streets 1 story above street level. Running down the center of each street was a human-sized transportation tube as well as walkways on either side for people who preferred walking from place to place. Between the 1st and 2nd floors of the human-sized buildings was a 3-foot-high floor, which ran through each building block after block as far as Sue could see. This level contained shops and living quarters, specially sized for androids. Nothing like this existed in the Serapi Sue came from. Though the buildings of the city were underground, when Sue looked up, it seemed the buildings ended at about 10 stories high. And far above the tops of the buildings was a bright, sunny blue sky, filled with puffy white clouds and even an occasional bird flying by. This, however, was merely digi-window panels fitted to the underside of the cavern in which the city was built, about a mile below ground level. The sky panels were programmed to display an entire 24-hour day, with the light changing as the sun moved across the sky to set in the west. After sunset, the sky would darken, stars would begin to appear, and the moon would rise. As Sue and Kay rushed by through the transportation tube, they could see apartments, stores, and businesses that had accommodations sized for the GX series androids. At each corner was a smaller elevator tube running down to the street level. Androids smaller than Sue also used this transportation system. As the cars sped by in the transparent tubes, many sizes of androids, from Sue's size to about half that, could be seen filling the seats. Sue had never seen so many goods and services tailored especially to the GX series androids, the tallest androids mass-produced, which had become the most popular model made. There were many thousands of GX androids in the city, and because of the wages about half of them received, someone realized there was money to be made supplying them with goods and services. She saw entire stores with clothes made for them. Kay told her a section of the public library had equipment and furniture their size, and that there were many apartments for rent or purchase with everything sized to the GX series. Some androids even owned their own shops and businesses. Sue and Kay stopped at an electronics store and checked out replacement parts and enhancements. There was even a little repair shop in the back. They also stopped at a public recharge station. If androids traveling around in the city were unable to get back to their living quarters, they could go into one of these facilities that had many small rooms containing only an easy chair and recharge lamp. For a small fee, they could sit under the lamp for as long as they needed to recharge. While traveling around the city, Sue noticed many android pairs sitting or walking close together, touching each other often, more so than Sue had ever seen in her time. Most of these pairs were male and female, but not all. When the tube stopped in front of a doorway with a sign above it which read, Android Social Hall, Kay said to Sue, "Let's stop in here." They got out of the tube and walked through the doorway. There were couches, tables, and chairs set up around the large room and grouped together in different areas with low walls separating each grouping. Many types of androids sat together talking, and some were alone. In addition to small lamps positioned around the dim room, above each nook was a recharge light, which could be switched on or off as the androids in any particular group desired. Most of the lights with androids underneath were switched on. Sue, who had been feeling run down after a day of work and touring the city, said, "I feel good in here. Why is that?" "It's the lights." Kay pointed to the lights above. "This place is the equivalent of a human coffee shop. The lights are low-grade recharge lights. It would take you all day to fully recharge in here, but these lights give you a bit of energy without putting you into unconscious recharge mode." Kay led Sue to a little secluded spot with 2 lounge chairs behind a low wall in the corner. Kay passed his hand over a sensor on the side of one chair, and the light above switched on. "Ah, that feels good," said Kay as he sank back into the soft reclining chair under the light. Sue sat down in the chair next to Kay and leaned back. They both sat in silence, soaking up the energy from the lights. "Have you always worked for Sten?" asked Sue. "No, I was created specifically for a wealthy household as their personal repair android. Working there was nice enough, but after a few years, I had enough money saved to buy my freedom. After that, I almost took a job at Zoprat, but heard good things about Enviro Repair and ended up taking a job there." "What's Zoprat?" asked Sue as she shifted in her chair to a more comfortable position. "That's the largest android employer in Serapi. It's owned by a guy named Bry. He started out with one shop, then really started expanding about 5 years ago, until he had shops all over the city, and other cities as well. I think about half the androids in Serapi work for Zoprat." After a half-hour relaxing in the social hall, Sue said, "I think we should be getting back to Enviro Repair. There are some things I'd like to do around my apartment." "Okay, but let's make just one more stop before you go back," said Kay. They both left the social hall, got back into the tube, and took a short ride to a place still in the android-size area of the city that had few shops. When they got out of the tube in this area, and Kay led Sue through a door, down a hall, and to another door, which he opened by passing his hand in front of a sensor. The door opened, and they both walked into a large room richly decorated with furniture, electronics, and art, all android-sized. Kay pointed to a large painting on the wall and said, "This isn't a reproduction of a painting done by a human. It's an original painting done by one of the few android artists, a GX female named Nars." Sue had never seen art made by androids, and didn't know androids were even capable of that kind of abstract representation. She stood in front of the painting staring at it, finding it strangely beautiful, an emotional reaction she had never experienced before. Kay told Sue that androids first started trying to make art only about 5 years ago, mostly just copying what humans had done. Then Nars began creating paintings from her own imagination, and a few other androids had since followed her lead. "I'm lucky to have this painting. It's one of the first Nars completed. They're much too expensive now for me to afford another one." Kay showed Sue around the rest of his apartment. He had 3 rooms, one of which was just for recharging. Another room was an office, and the last largest room was for visiting. Sue felt confident she would be able to find her way back to Enviro Repair, so she left Kay's apartment and rode the tube home by herself. Once she got to the closest corner, she left the tube and took the elevator down to the street level. Before she reached Enviro Repair, Sue saw Thought across the street. She called to him, but he didn't even look her way, though he must have heard her call. He kept walking at a fast pace, looking only straight ahead. Sue crossed the street and caught up to Thought. Walking alongside him, she said, "Thought, won't you stop and talk a minute?" "Talk about what?" Thought glanced at Sue, but didn't stop walking. Sue reached out and grabbed Thought's arm to stop him. "Thought, it's me, Sue. Don't you recognize me?" Thought stopped and stood in the middle of the walkway, with people and androids weaving around them on both sides. Thought looked at Sue uncertainly, as if he wasn't sure whether he recognized her. "I have to get to work." "You got a job already? Where is it?" "At Zoprat," replied Thought. "Weren't you able to get your old job back?" asked Sue. Thought got an even more trance-like look on his face, eyes staring straight ahead, and said, "The only job I ever want is at Zoprat. Zoprat is the best employer of androids in Serapi." "What are you doing there? Do you like it?" asked Sue. "I have to go to work," said Thought, and walked away from Sue. This time she didn't try to stop him. She just stood in the middle of the walkway, watching as he disappeared into the crowd.